The Gulo website has got a selection of photos taken somewhere along Pottinger Street. So in this video, I'll show some of the clues we can use to identify exactly where each photo was taken. And this is following on from that recent video where we looked at the photo of the rickshaw and the sedan chair on Pottinger Street, because there was some doubt about whether it was taken up at the top of Pottinger Street near Hollywood Road or down at the bottom near Queens Road. Here's an early map of Hong Kong from 1845. Pottinger Street already shown here, so it's one of the earliest streets from the colonial era. It was an important street because it ran from Queens Road here up to the Young Colonies Magistracy and Jail, and also passed by the main Roman Catholic Church in Hong Kong at that time. Let's enlarge the map. So 21 years later, 1866, Pottinger Street has been extended. There's been reclamation. It now runs out to the seafront here, the Prior, what we'd call Devoe Road today. Our next map from 1901 was drawn shortly after the next big round of reclamation, and that pushes the shoreline out to Connaught Road here and extends Pottinger Street again. It ends here facing to a government pier. This was known as the Pottinger Street Pier. Later reclamations have moved the shore even further away, but this time Pottinger Street wasn't extended, so after Exchange Square was built, that blocks the access to the sea for Pottinger Street here. Now these maps give us our first clues. If we look at the shape of the road, you can see there's a bend here. Pottinger Street does a little bend. There's another bend here and a third bend here. And we can look for those in the old photos, and that'll give us a clue whereabouts we are. We can also pay attention to how the street slope changes along its route. So this northern newer section here, this was built completely on reclaimed land. And if we look at a photo of the street today, we can see that land is completely flat. So this is the view from Connaught Road over to Devoe Road here. The next section was a bit half and half. It's this part here. Let's bring back the old map again, 1845. So this section of Pottinger Street here, this is reclaimed land, but this half here actually was built over the old shoreline. And if we look at that section of the street, we can see the difference. So we're standing here at Devoe Road, looking up to Queens Road, and the first section is flat, and then we see the road rise up to the old shoreline here. So that's another clue we can use. From Queens Road on, everything is the original Pottinger Street, which is all uphill. Here's a view from Queens Road today. You can see that this section of Pottinger Street starts with quite a steep staircase. The stairs look old, but actually they're quite a recent construction, so no help to us with the old photos. The uphill section from here is the tricky section. There aren't any bends in the road or changes in the incline to help us, but if we switch to a detailed map from 1897, that'll give us another set of clues to work with. So this map gives us a good view of the Tai Kwun site with the jail, so the old radial style of jail as it was, magistracy and police station, a smaller police station back in 1897 because this section was still private land. You can see it's a bunch of private houses here. Not too long after, the headquarters building will be built along here, and then the whole site is the Tai Kwun site that we know today. Anyway, back to Pottinger Street. So first clues. These lower sections, so from Queens Road to Stanley Street to Wellington Street, you can see the buildings are sort of parallel, roughly parallel to the line of Pottinger Street. The next section from Wellington Street to Hollywood Road, it's too long for that. So there are also these middle sections of buildings at right angles to the street. And when we look at them on pictures, they've got a distinctive set of balconies, and there were different businesses in each of these buildings, and so we can see their signs along the road as well. So those are good clues to look for. Thankfully, there's also a small difference between these two sections, otherwise they'd seem identical. And it's here, number 74 Queen's Road. The wall that comes along the side of Pottinger Street has got this little right angle cutout. So the straight line is a low wall, but the main wall of the building has this right angle cutout. Now let's see how many of these clues we can apply. Here's the page on the website for Pottinger Street. Let's see what photos we have. The first two are different copies of that same scene we saw earlier, the sedan chair and one of the early two-seater rickshaws on Pottinger Street. And if we look here, you see how this wall along the street meets at a point here. So there's sort of a triangle shape here, and it is exactly that triangle shape that we saw at number 74. So this photo looking at number 74 Queen's Road, we're down the bottom of the hill. Another view, roughly the same area. We can see there's that cutout again over here, and additional confirmation, the steps here. So these were at the bottom of Pottinger Street. This is the pavement of Queen's Road, and the two don't quite line up properly. Let me show you back on the map again. You see that Pottinger Street does not come down at a clean right angle to Queen's Road. There's a bit of a bend there, and that was taken care of in the steps. So the steps, these 4 lines of granite steps, are laid out a bit like a paper fan. So at the left-hand side they come very close together, and over here they spread out, so just giving a gentle curve down here. The next photo pulls it all together. So we've got the cutout here in number 74, we've got the 4 granite steps, we've got a rickshaw here, confirmation that we are down on Queen's Road, and final confirmation, the Bunlun Photographer's Studio, which we know is at number 76 Queen's Road Central over here. Here's quite a different scene, and it happens to be one from my own collection, so we can take a closer look. And we see the road in the foreground is flat, so we know that's on the last section to be built. This picture taken around 1904, so not long after that land was reclaimed. And that explains why there's no permanent buildings here yet, just a temporary one, either under construction or perhaps even being taken down, we're not sure. So this is Devoe Road here, and this is the road up to Queen's Road. And again, we can see there's that flat section to start with, and then up the hill, the old shoreline, up to Queen's Road. And then this is the point where Pottinger Street bends off to the left. That's why we see the side of the building here. The next photo is quite a popular one. We've seen multiple copies of this. This version of it comes from a hand-coloured postcard, and it's not particularly clear, but luckily we've got a sharper version here, and we can see this line of balconies here and lots of different shop signs here. So if we switch back to the map, we're looking at this section of Pottinger Street here, up above Wellington Street. Into the 1920s, and a couple of significant changes. Now, first of all, the bottom section here has been rebuilt. Let's just scroll back up to the 1880s for a second. Right, so we've got Queen's Road pavement, 4 steps, and then a steady slope up to the next junction. This will be Stanley Street up here. In the 1920s, that's changed. So now you have another set of steps after the first 4, and then a shallow gradient up to about here, and then back to the original gradient up to Stanley Street here. The other addition is a street lamp up here on Wellington Street. We see that quite often in the old pictures. Now this 1930s picture is another one from my collection, and for a change we're looking downhill. We can't see that big street lamp for the reason that it's just behind us. So we're standing on Wellington Street looking down the hill. Looks like it's the day when the new firewood was delivered. See one over here, lots more over here. And these are all wrapped up, waiting for someone to come along with a shoulder pole and carry them off to the customers. Over on the other side of the road, interesting shop. This is one of the shops that sells the paper goods sold as offerings to the deceased. For burning, you burn them to send them off to your deceased relatives. And at this time, it looks like you could buy a house, or you could even buy a car. You can see a car here with its cellophane windscreen. And beyond them is Stanley Street here, and then down at the bottom is Queen's Road, and then we see Pottinger Street bend off to the right, out of sight here. Here's a better view of the changes. So we see the new steps, and then the flat section which ends here, and there's some sort of vent pipe coming up out of the pavement here. I've seen a 2003 map, and at that time it showed there was a public toilet roughly around here built into underneath the Pottinger Street, but I don't know if it goes back this far. I'm not sure if that's perhaps the reason for the pipe here. A few years later, 1941, and I recognize this as a photo by the American journalist Harrison Foreman. And the line of shop signs here shows we're up above Wellington Street again. Another of his photos gives us a clearer view of that vent here. And then this one, here we've got the buildings parallel to Pottinger Street, so probably down below Wellington Street for this one. A few years later, 1946, another professional photo. This is from the photographer Hedda Morrison, and it shows another big change in the war years. This was an air raid tunnel, so an air raid shelter was excavated into the hillside here, with the entrance here just below Wellington Street. And you can see the Wellington Street lamp has had a bit of an upgrade as well. So here's another view of the Hedda Morrison picture. So we've got Queen's Road, that initial section of pavement. You can see the curved 4 steps here, then the new additional section of steps up to Stanley Street, across, then there's the entrance into the air raid shelter, and then up to Wellington Street and its street lamp up here. Around the same time, we're standing on the Wellington Street junction here, and a new landmark to add to our collection is a postbox. Now the early 1950s see a big change. Let's go back to 1946 again and just see how clear the street is. Well, lots of people, of course, lots of sedan chairs, but the big change in the 1950s is suddenly all these market stalls sprout up along the sides of the road. I think for perhaps a couple of reasons. First of all, that was the time of the huge influx of immigrants, and they were all needing work. And also the sedan chair is falling out of fashion, so you didn't need to keep the street clear for sedan chairs. Now here's another addition in the 1950s. Down at the bottom, we're on Queen's Road here, and we can see one of those big metal utility boxes painted green appears here. And this line here, this is another shoulder pole. So at that time, we would find just men would stand at a set location with their shoulder pole, and they would be available for hire. So if you needed something heavy carried, they'd hope that you'd hire them. I wonder if we've caught the man here waiting for a customer to come along. So a few more views of that, and I think we get one more view. Here we go, of likely the man waiting for some business with his shoulder pole here. is a better view of our postbox. So we're up at Wellington Street again. And one more from 1972, postbox on the right here. And then before we know it, we're at a recent picture. Well, I was going to say recent because it's a photo that I took, but looking at the date, it was 18 years ago already. So time flies. Anyway, that's a good spot to stop, but I'll put links in the comments if you'd like to carry on exploring. And hope you've enjoyed seeing some of the clues we used to identify the old photos. And thank you very much for watching.